God's vision for the church is a community of love. The Apostle John in his first letter speaks of how love can be made complete among us. In other words, instead of love growing cold, it is to grow and mature in us, among us, and through us until it becomes complete. For this to happen, we must be aware of some of the hindrances that can prevent our love from growing and make sure we deal with them. Let's take a look. In Mark chapter 8 verses 22 to 25, we read the account of Jesus healing the blind man and how at first the man could only see people like trees walking around. But after Jesus again ministered to the man, he could see everything clearly. Apart from being a great encouragement to those who haven't experienced complete healing yet, I believe it is a prophetic picture of how God wants to help us to see others His way so we can love them like He does. The first hindrance to love becoming mature is blindness. Paul writes in 1 Timothy chapter 1 verse 5 that love comes from a pure heart, a good conscience, and a sincere faith. What we need to realize is that when our hearts are not pure and our consciences are not clear and our faith is insincere, we become increasingly self-aware and self-conscious, making us less aware and conscious of those around us. In other words, we become blind and stop seeing others because we have become preoccupied with our own issues. As King David writes in Psalm 51:6, "Surely you desire truth in the inner parts, so we must cultivate a pure heart, a good conscience, and a sincere faith if we are to see others and love them." The second hindrance to love becoming complete in us, among us, and through us is the way we see people. As the blind man began to see, he could only identify people as trees walking around. In other words, he saw people as moving objects. In the same way, our love will never mature as long as we view people as objects instead of people for whom God gave His Son. We must be careful not to view unbelievers, for example, as targets for the gospel instead of people who need a revelation of God's love for them. There are too many well-meaning Christians who father new believers, but fail to be a father to those newly born because they have treated people as objects instead of people. The same issue can apply to how we view the church. The church is not just an event we attend on a Sunday or an organization that we support, but it is people, the community of God that must grow in love so that Christ is revealed. The third hindrance to love maturing in us, among us, and through us is found in 1 John chapter 4, where we read that the one who fears is not made perfect in love. John explains in chapter 4 that if we know God's love and rely on His love, we will not fear punishment. Perfect love drives out any fear of punishment. In the same way, fear of punishment can prevent us from truly loving others. When we withhold our affection because we fear punishment like rejection, judgment, or criticism, love cannot become mature in us or through us. But when we rely on the love God has lavished upon us, we can dare to love others regardless of how they may respond. Let love be your highest goal. Recognize that God's vision for the church is to build a community of mature love. That is what all of us should be pursuing. As you do so, be aware that love comes from a pure heart, a good conscience, and a sincere faith. Ask the Lord to show you the condition of your inner parts, as King David puts it, and to help you cultivate a pure heart, a good conscience, and a sincere faith, so that you are not blind to those around you, but are able to see them and love them. Then it is important that you check how you see people. Are they just walking trees, or are they people who need God's love? Ask God to give you His compassion for people, so that you avoid treating others like objects to fulfill a task, instead of real people whom God has placed in your life to love completely. Don't allow the fear of punishment to stop you from loving others. Be filled with the Father's love, and take the risk of being vulnerable with others, so they can experience the fullness of God's love. I encourage you to reflect on Mark chapter 8 verses 22 to 25 to get a picture of how God wants to restore our vision to love. Meditate on 1 Timothy chapter 1 verse 5 as you consider the significance of cultivating a pure heart, a good conscience, and a sincere faith in order to see and love others. I also find Psalm 51 very helpful to see how important it is to deal with the inner parts to be able to see others properly. 1 Corinthians chapter 13 is a wonderful chapter on love, but particularly verses 1 to 3 show how important it is that we love others as people and not just treat them as objects to fulfill a task. John, the disciple whom Jesus loved, gives us extensive insight into the nature of God's love in 1 John chapter 4 verses 7 to 21. And I encourage you to reflect on what John says concerning the fear of punishment and how perfect love casts out that fear. God is building a community of love, and I encourage you to pursue love and let love be your highest goal. My prayer is that the church would learn to love so that love is made complete among us and Christ is revealed through us. God bless you.